Greetings, YouTube. One of the things I've heard frequently over the years, and I mean many, many times, is hear someone lament about how they miss the good old days. It's almost always someone that is of the socially conservative bent, and they're almost always saying it in response to some social change that they don't approve of. And I read something recently that got me thinking, and I've come to the realization that when people are saying that, they're not actually hearkening back to a simpler time, which is often the nomenclature they use when they discuss this. They say simpler time often. Because there's no such thing as a simple time. At no point in human history has there ever been a simple time. Not even our ancestors had a simple time. Life has always been complex. It's just different varieties of complexity. But they've always been complex. Whether it was roaming the Serengeti trying to find food and keep yourself from being eaten by a leopard, or working in a factory and making sure that your house payments get done on time and making sure your cats get properly fed and taken care of. Life is always complex. Relationships are complex. No, when people are saying things like, it used to be simpler, they're almost always just referring to their childhood, to when they were teenagers or younger. Oh, when I was a kid, life used to be simpler. No, life was just as complex then as it now. The difference was you. And you weren't simpler either. You were just as complex as everybody else. What you were was ignorant. Now, ignorant in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Everyone's ignorant of something. Pardon me. And that's acceptable. Ignorance is a state of being that is easy to remedy. You do it by learning. When you were a kid, you didn't understand how complex the world is. Your ignorance protected you. And in the case of, say, being a white, straight person in America, your privilege continued to protect you. Your privilege continued to keep you in a state of ignorance into adulthood, past the point where you should have how the world works. That's one of the advantages of privilege. It protects you from things. Which is why I've heard more men say that lament than women, because women have never been protected from the sharp, pointy end of misogyny and the patriarchy. While men are adversely affected by the patriarchy, they are protected more from the obvious things. Other men are not harassing and sexually assaulting and raping them at the rates that women are. Women are harassed on a daily basis in a manner that men will never experience from other men. This won't happen. Anybody brings up prison, I'm just going to freaking ban you, okay? We're not talking about prison. We're talking about out here in the real world. That privilege protected you. But life has always been complex. So when somebody says, I miss the good old days, or I miss my childhood when things were simpler, they're lamenting their state of ignorance. They want to go back to a time when they didn't know about racism and misogyny and homophobia and transphobia and economic inequality and political abuse by the wealthy against every group I've just mentioned. About how institutionalized racism has created entire family lineages of poverty. How we have undermined the infrastructure in cities that are dominantly non-white because racism can. And they didn't know these things. And that's what they lament. They lament their own ignorance. And if you're lamenting ignorance, that's a sign you've got things to work on. You've got stuff you got to fix. And you got to do it soon. Because while ignorance is a state of mind that can be fixed, it can also be fatal. Because it will put you into a state of mind where you can make mistakes that will hurt you emotionally and mentally and physically. So get on that. If you find yourself lamenting the good old days, think about why. Think about what you're actually lamenting, what you're actually missing. And work on that. You can do it. I have faith. Don't be ignorant. And definitely don't be sad that you lost some of that ignorance.